It's a short time wrestling podcast in the Speakeasy. In the Speakeasy. In the Speakeasy. Finally, as we're preparing for Fargo, Jason Fulmore, great name, Southeastern guy, as we're using the Speakeasy for its intended purpose to talk wrestling and drink beverages. So, Jason's here from Southeast Wrestling. Go to SEWrestle, SoutheastWrestling.com. He's wearing a Southeast RTC shirt. Virginia Tech is a client of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. So, I'm guessing you knew that coming forward, so you're just brown-nosing a little bit for Coach Roby.
Absolutely. Why not? Why not? I mean, I got to rep the SE
Right.
Southeast, and I knew there was a connection up here in Minnesota. Might as well go ahead and help that connection.
Little connection, that is correct. So, one, how the heck are you here? You live in the Southeast. This is not the Southeast. This state borders Canada. So, explain, one, the theory about driving to Fargo. Because I've done it way too many times.
Yeah. From here.
From Virginia twice.
From Virginia.
And once
I was like, to drive from here to Fargo is.
it's actually from here to the Dome is 6 turns. It's
is that
see,
right?
right, left. Now to the turf, it's right.
Well, that should
I don't need a GPS when I go there. When Earl shows up, we're gonna not need a GPS because this will be the 22nd tournament in a row.
Even Earl can find the right.
But I can tell you this: first time I drove to Fargo from Virginia, I was gonna go Major League Baseball. I was gonna go Cleveland, Chicago, Milwaukee, Minnesota. Well, got a late start. Cleveland's out. Driving down Addison on Sunday afternoon, like, all right, the Cubs are supposed to play, I think, the Marlins that night. People are pouring out of the stadium. I'm like, what's going on? ESPN moved the game. So I didn't get to see Wrigley. So now I'm driving to Milwaukee. And now, mind you, I'm using an Atlas from 1989 that Mike Bush State Farm, my insurance agent, it's like, what is it, 281-1210? You'll like Mike, 507-281-1210? I think that's the pitch for Mike Bush. It's on my keychain. Right. Well, it was a Mike Bush State Atlas, and it was from it didn't have that connection from like Chicago to Madison. So I lost like 3 hours going up to Milwaukee and cutting over. Well, I was going to go to Milwaukee anyway. That was year 2. And then so my first Major League game is a Brewers game. Brewers-Reds, week after the All-Star game, that was a tie. And then, you fill out the credit card and you get the bucket hat. And you don't get the credit card because my credit was horrible. I was in college. And then the next day, drive into the Metrodome Twins-Angels. So then drove to Fargo. So went fishing, had never caught a walleye till like actually 2 years ago. So that was the initial drive.
So was that the Robin Young era?
Oh, no. That was 2001, 2002. I'm trying to think because then
you're young.
Right.
So
then I remember one year I was supposed to go with a photographer, Paul Swisher, and then that was the next year I drove from Virginia. It was right before my senior year. And I was just like, all right, I haven't heard from him. Wednesday, I'm like, I got to go. Just went to Jiffy Lube, got the oil change, and gone. And then didn't stop till I got to Milwaukee. So Virginia, and that's when I realized it went the wrong way. And then I saw this was before GPS was like affordable for a broke college kid. So that was my initial run. Then I've driven from Pennsylvania, and then I've driven from Colorado 2 or 3 times. So
where in Colorado?
The Springs when I worked at USA Wrestling. So that's about that's a 12 to 16 hour run. I know I was doing good until I got to like Chicago. Then I was like, it's 18 hours. Why is it taking me 20? So
which is the better drive? Virginia to Fargo or Colorado to Fargo?
Well, I did a video of it, and I went through like what? Actually, there's the answer: Virginia, because it's not flat. Once you get to eastern Colorado, it's like you can like watch your dog run away for 3 days. I mean, it's like that.
Or the storm come in.
He was like, hey, I can see Seattle from here, So that's kind of where we're at. But here in the Speakeasy, again, using it for its intended purpose. Earl Smith will be in at some point through the week. Corby and Josh from Mad Scouts are going to come in and crash the party a little bit too. But you're the first non-Richard Immel to be in here because Richard's been in here twice before it was even ready to go, and then he was the first one ready to go post-COVID. So welcome. This is the longest intro ever. No, it's not because I'm long-winded, but yeah. So welcome to the Speakeasy, and we got you right up here. I tried to make you feel at home as best I could.
I know. I walked in. I was like, that looks pretty nice. Actually.
I was sitting there making sure. It's like 1 L or 2. I got it right.
Yes. Well, you know what? I've read your almanac. I've read all the different things. I haven't run across any mistakes, even though you said there are.
I actually caught one last night. I'm in the middle of doing the Fargo Legacy State Series, and I get to Ohio, And I'm like, how many titles have they won? And it says 7. And I go look. I was like, why is their team score 2? Did I fat finger something or delete something? So I go back and look, and it was I want to say 87 Junior Greco. So I go look. No, they only had 13 points. They shouldn't have been first. Then I looked at like my almanac had it right, but the team score had it wrong and my database had it wrong. So I had to correct that on the fly last night. So there will be a new update of the Fargo Almanac, FargoAlmanac.com, coming out at some point, because I always find them. I mean, there's 19,000 names or there's more than that in there. So. There's a lot of names in there.
Well, I mean, I've been writing my blog posts trying to highlight the SEC and everything, or the Southeast kids and everything else. And I mean, it's been a great resource. It's 187 pages of just like awesome.
I'm trying to add more, but it's like, because it's like $25 to print one copy.
Oh, is that right?
This is why it's not a printed document. It's like, hey, is this a hard copy? No, because it would be $100.
It's impressive. I mean, at some point in time in the future, it should be a hardbound copy.
I mean, I do print out a copy of it for me each year. I got one over here, but then when you update it and it gets outdated, and you're like, eh. But yeah, it's always fun.
It's a great resource, and you can kind of totally see the evolution. That's what I was looking at, like Georgia and Florida and some of the different states. To be able to see kind of how they've kind of progressed, gotten better, and maybe kind of dipped a little bit. So it's pretty.
Yeah, especially like Georgia, they've had that run of kids that have come through, and that is where. It's just you see the bump, you see the influence in there. So
I mean they had what 17 All-Americans in 16.
I mean I just looked at it.
I think that's by far more than it was their first top 5 finish.
Yeah,
I believe.
That's also in the Rockfin pages or Patreon. If you're a patron or a Rockfin, you can go to Georgia and find that out. But off the top of my head, I mean I've got 16 more to go to release by Wednesday.
Is that right?
So I've got you had Mo this morning, then you, and then Earl doesn't come in until tomorrow night. So I got the rest of tomorrow to finish these things up, because we're out at like 5 or 6 a.m. on Friday morning to get the last chance qualifier. So that's the plan.
Got it.
But I asked you the question and we didn't talk about you at all. So the plan here, what possessed you to drive from Macon, Georgia to North? I mean, because MapQuest is going to MapQuest. That's all we are. Let's do the Google Maps. If you were going to drive straight through, now you tell the story, and I can tell you exactly how long it should have taken you nonstop.
I think it should have taken me right around 24 hours or something along those lines. But basically, I started in Macon, dropped off my dogs in Birmingham, Alabama with my kids, and then continued on to basically Memphis, because you know what? Had to have some barbecue. That's a good place to stop. Drove to St. Louis, again, not too terribly far from Memphis. Just take the days, 5 hours or something like that, because I had to stop at Schlafly Brewing. That was a place that I always stop. Then I got the opportunity to go and visit, Tanya and I, my wife and I got the opportunity to go visit the Dan Gable Museum on Sunday afternoon with Rebecca Roper, and look at that and look at all the different things that are posted. And I hadn't been to that one. I'd been to the Stillwater one. I hadn't been there. And then you know what? I mean, I had to run up to Minneapolis and see you and spend some time in a city that I think I've only flown in and out of. I've never actually spent any time in Minneapolis before. I was a military kid.
Okay.
So I've lived everywhere. So Virginia is I've lived there many times.
Which branch?
Army.
Okay, so Fort Eustis, Fort Monroe. I'm trying to think of the Army installations where I grew up.
So Fort Lee,
outside of Richmond.
Petersburg, yeah. And then I was at my dad was in Fort Ord, California. That's when I became a California Angels fan. When I was
See, you call them by the correct name. It's still the California Angels. It's not on video right now, just off screen. I've got the California. This pennant's from like 1960, I think. It's old. But yeah.
I mean, I was a fan of the Angels when Bobby Grich played second base and Rod Carew played first base. That's how old that that's when I began loving baseball. And lived in Fort Killeen, Texas, and pretty much everywhere. But Minneapolis was a place I hadn't spent a whole lot of time, and definitely wanted to stop in and kind of see your beautiful studio.
I'm glad that other people have got eyes on this thing, because I've been sitting there like trying to like parade this thing around wrestling. It's like I'm trying to get it to be a thing, and it's the Speakeasy. It might actually become a thing now. Thank you, but I mean that's one of those things. By the way, 17 hours and 41 minutes.
17 hours.
Or
okay.
if you went through St. Louis, which this one actually both routes take you through St. Louis. One of them takes you up a different way. That would be 11 minutes longer. But anyway, so yeah, that's
And those 11 minutes can make all
that's
the
a bit of a
difference
haul.
in
See,
the world.
Macon's actually more central than I thought it was. For some reason, I thought it was down near Savannah, but it's not. So
No, it's about 3 hours from Savannah.
Yeah.
Not too bad.
former home of the Macon Whoopie.
That's right. The Macon Bacon as well.
Macon Bacon.
The Macon Bacon and the Macon Whoopie.
All right, let's see. So Tony Hager's letting me know that we've got tons of echo coming here, so I'm going to figure that out. I think I know that problem.
Uh-oh. I'm glad you're on it because I don't have any idea. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy the beer and talk wrestling.
Yeah, well, let's figure that out. So let's see. Let's bring up the. This is why we're live, and we figured out. So let's bring up the old Rockfin. Why is it sound? So I can unmute this tab. So if you say something real quick.
Yeah, I love the picture that's right above your head. It is beautiful.
Ah, so it's on your end. So let's figure that out. So hang tight. Tony Hager, thank you, because I think I've got the archive. The audio will come back on the archive pretty well. But talk amongst yourselves. So, no. I've got to figure that out. So this is on. This is what we're going to do. So we're going to switch the camera angle to the bar shot, or to the single shot. So this is me now. Jason's behind me. So we're going to do some live. I don't even know how that's going to record. So bar shot with no chat. He's up there. Let's see. That might be it. That might be the reason. Is we're looking. I'm changing all sorts of shots here. You can't see. I'm gonna guess. Bar shot no chat. Bar shot no chat. I'm gonna check that out here. I think channel 4 might be duped, which is why. So we're gonna check with ye old Rockfin here in a moment. Once I get back to the page. Thank you for joining our intermission, Tony. This is live.
There's so many cameras. I don't even know.
Well, there's only one that's active, and then there's one over there by my desk.
Got it. Okay.
So let's see. No chat. Now, give me something real quick.
All right. I see those Virginia Squires over your right shoulder. Tidewater Tides, AAA Mets affiliate, I believe.
Okay, let's see. Hold on. That's weird. That is weird because I've been working on this. Mine sounds good if the echo's coming from you. This is what you call bad podcasting, folks.
It's all good.
Yeah, let's see. See, now, at least I've got the audio. It's working. That's going to record.
All my fault.
Still waiting. See, I'm going through the delay on Rockfin to check it out.
Do you want me to keep talking?
I think it's picking up because my mic might be super hot, but
Pull it back.
no, you're good there. It's mine. Okay. It's what I get for using this microphone, and I never use it. Looking at my levels, they look good. Tony, is it getting any better on your end? See, you spend several hours working on things.
Still got to be better.
He says nope. We're gonna take a short break.
Take a short
we're
break.
not breaking. We're just breaking it. So let's see. That's the one we're on. right, those of you watching, the computer audio is only on to test what Tony was saying. So I've actually was neglecting the chat. Justin says he hears fine. Yeah, the audio wasn't on the computer. So let's give it a shot now.
All right.
So, folks out there in the chat, if you got us, let us know. We're going to pick this thing up. When you click to the computer camera, I didn't hear it. Well, that's because that camera isn't mic'd up. Camera from the table. No, that shouldn't be. I'm talking, and it's picking up there. Yeah. The mic from the desk isn't even on. That's not even mapped to this channel. Wondering if it's you coming through. All right, keep talking. All right, you know what? I've got the audio. If it's there, it's there. Justin says it's fine. Tony's hearing audio. I don't know. I'm not hearing any audio. I hear a little bit of echo. I'm going to try it one more time. Jason, give me one more test, and we're going to continue on, or we're going to stop it and just record the audio.
All right. So, of all the things that are on your walls, which is your favorite?
Picture behind me.
Picture behind you?
I'll explain that in a moment.
All right.
Here's the thing. I'm testing, and the audio's come through. Anyway, well, we're just going to keep rolling. I'll have the chat back up, if anything here. Thanks, Tony, for letting us know. So the picture behind me, which you can't see on the video, is the picture of the World Championships from 2017. It is Team USA. It is every American that was in Paris. I'm in there. Immel's in there. Hazard's in there. Oh, yeah, Team USA is in there. So that's the best one I've got on here. In terms of that, my favorites personally are probably the Shrine to Me. I mean,
and it's quite.
I mean, I got newspaper articles in there for me from high school, going back to high school, the Olympic stuff, and then awards and such. Those are the cool things. But of course, the Buccaneers 2 Super Bowl championships are very, very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, you've got quite a few. You might have more Buccaneers stuff in here than you have any other.
That's
sports.
the team. That is my number one team. Like of any sport, it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's the team that is the nearest and dearest to my heart of any of my favorite teams. So.
And why?
Well, my stepbrother's uncle was a linebackers coach for them when I was like in 3rd grade, and it was like.
And you grew up like.
I thought the logo was cool, and it just
Now, was this the old logo?
That's this guy right here. That's the.
Okay.
I'll bring that on screen. That's Bucko Bruce. When you're in 3rd grade, that's cool. Then you realize creamsicles are not cool, and 4 and 12 football teams are really also not cool.
Right. But Leroy Selman was cool.
Leroy Selman, their first ever draft pick. Pretty sure he's still their only Hall of Famer.
I don't know.
Because there was a run of really bad draft picks following.
Yes.
I mean, they drafted 2 Heisman Trophy winners back-to-back, and one of them threw 35 picks as a rookie, and the other didn't ever play for him.
It happens. It's what happens when you get a quarterback sometimes.
Yeah, that's what happens when we get a quarterback sometime. Yeah, I'm going to have to work on this audio. And we're just going to keep proceeding because, it is what it is. Like I said, patrons, we can fix this. MattTalkOnline.com/contribute. And get a real good camera, can work on things. I haven't used that microphone through the audio box before, and I was trying to product test it. It's kind of hard to test equipment by yourself.
With one person.
Yeah. So anyway, we're moving forward. We're back to you. We've been going on for 25 minutes, and we still haven't left the state of Macon, Georgia yet. No, but so your plan to go to Fargo. So what are you looking forward to most in Fargo this year?
Yeah. So I mean, I cover 6 states down in the southeast. I think that the thing that was the most interesting for me was the run that the Georgia 16Us had in 2019. It's quite a group of kids, and it'll be interesting to see if they can replicate that at the junior level. And that was one of the things that I was paying attention to. Matt Singleton won't be there. He's on the junior world team going to Russia, so he's not wrestling. I was looking forward to watching Corey Land, but Corey will be at the Cadet World Championships. But they're really, really good kids. I think Fargo is a great event, and it's always interesting to see how they stack up against the rest of the nation.
So, what do you claim as home? Because you said you've been all around, and you just moved from Alabama to Georgia. So, you're following the Georgia kids. But what is home? Who are the kids you're watching the most? That's a good question. Probably the Georgia kids.
I coached for a long time in Florida. I wrestled in Florida in high school. For a long time, I watched the Florida kids a lot and paid very close attention to the Florida kids. But since I've been in Alabama, I lived in Birmingham, professor at UAB for 20 years. I paid attention to the Alabama kids, but this run of the Georgia kids is just, it's hard to ignore. So, you want to pay attention to kind of that level of talent and that level of, those types of kids. So, but it's actually a lot of fun to watch all the kids from across the Southeast, and kind of see how they do. So yeah, but I live in Georgia now, so Georgia's home. But I mean, I'm a nomad, so that's that.
I don't think that name's allowed anymore.
No,
but
not.
the thing is now, when looking at the Southeast, like I said, I'm from Virginia. I live in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Virginia's home, even though I've been now here longer than any place I've ever lived in my life. 8 years in this edifice that is my house in New Brighton, where the weather I think it's 79 degrees today. It's pretty nice. I tell you, it's pretty nice.
It's nicer than
winter sucks, but like I was like, I'm from Virginia. Well, that's not the South. Well, it's south of the Mason-Dixon line, so yeah, it's the South. It was the capital of that, famous uprising this country is known for. But when you look at the footprint of the Southeast, where do you stop? Like, for example, like Louisiana and Arkansas, they're kind of, is that at the Southeast, or how far do you go up to Maryland, through the Kentucky, Tennessee? Where is your geographic footprint of what you're mainly focusing on?
So I focus, the beginning of this, so way back 1994, I actually ran a website, FloridaWrestling.com, and focused solely on Florida. I was coaching at the time, that sort of thing. But when I moved to Alabama in 2001, I wanted to still keep my toes in Florida. That's where I knew all the coaches. That's where I knew the kids. That's where I knew everything. But Alabama and Georgia were right there. They wrestle a lot in one another. And there's Camden County in southern Georgia wrestles more in Florida, I think, than they do in Georgia. So definitely those three states, and that's where I started.
Camden County, a ton of All-Americans this year. On the college side, they're everywhere.
Camden County is, Jess Wilder's just doing gangbusters. He's sending them all over the place. Life U, I picked up I think one of the Orem kids was it Life U?
Mm-hmm.
Was he a champ?
Yeah, it was a champ. Yeah, it was because there were two Georgia kids that met in the finals in the NAIA. Kid from Bruton Parker was also in the finals.
Right.
And I played them.
Oh, and he was a Camden County.
Right, they're high school teammates.
Yeah, Lucas.
Yeah, that's it.
Right?
And what's funny is I was trying to figure out what to do for the walkout song for those, because I control the music at the NAIAs. Devil Went Down to Georgia was the walkout, because both of them would have been happy, I think. So
that's right. So I focused on those three states, but then it kind of grew and grew over the last 6-7 years, and I would go up to Tennessee. I would be in South Carolina for the Southern Slam. North Carolina would reach out, and I was like, you know what? I want to try to promote as much as possible. So I stopped at 6. I can't do any more. I just don't have the capacity to do any more. I probably don't even have the capacity to do 6 as well as I would like to do 6. But that's where I stopped it. But the Southeast truly is Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana. That's what I think of the Southeast. I just don't have the capacity to kind of make it
right. Yeah, it's still a one-person enterprise.
Absolutely. And for a long time it was a one-person enterprise working part-time while I was a professor.
Now you mentioned Birmingham. When I was down there last time I was in Alabama was in 2013 for the Division II championships, and Rod Gaddy took me to a restaurant. Kind of one of those, like a more or less it's like a burger place, but it's not burger. It was barbecue sandwiches. And there's this place right near UAB that had a Bama sandwich, and I don't know I can't remember what was on it. I can't remember the name of it. I always text him like, "Hey, what was the name of that place?" The Bama sandwich. It was so good. One time I ate 3 of them at lunch. I'm like, I had one, and I was like, I'm getting another. And before we left, I was like, dude, I'm getting another. This was so good. So Rod, if you're out there, tell me. I can't remember the Bama sandwich. I'm sure if I looked up my text messages, I can find it. But yeah, it's nuts.
It wasn't Dreamland Barbecue.
No.
I think off the top of my head.
So I'm gonna
2013. I hope it's still around.
So I'm gonna do a search for Bama sandwich at UAB.
Right.
Let's see, what do we get?
I'm interested.
Yeah, because so am I. Because I'm gonna have to go to these old. Let's see, where are we at? This is Again, more bad podcasting. It's not the garage. It's not the deli. Not that. It's not a deli. It's not a deli. It's not that. Nope, it's not that. Rod, where you at? I'm gonna have to find this up. Anyway. But it's.
I think Rod's up in Nashville now.
Yeah, well, he was the one that took me out there, and was a good time down there at D2's So
D2's, yeah. And you guys were out at the new Crossplex,
Yep,
right?
yep. That was better than the first time the D2 did the festival, because the first time they did it was in Houston in '09, and they put swimming. It was because it's indoor track and field swimming and wrestling. Well, they put all the athletes in the same hotel, and their season all ended at the same time. Just they called it they just ended up calling it the Riot at the Hyatt. It was my first Division IIs, and it was part of a festival. And then I remember Birmingham. Two things about Birmingham I realized that made me realize that I don't live in the South anymore is when you go to an Applebee's or even a Chili's or something like that in the South, be prepared to spend an hour and a half, because it is not. You go in Pennsylvania, you're in and out 25 minutes.
Really?
New York, it's like here it's probably in the middle of that the slow Southern hospitality meets the we gotta go kind of thing. But down there, like we went to that Applebee's right across from the Crossplex. It was like, well, yep, I've had 4 sweet teas. I'm just now getting my meal, and everybody's having a good old time. Going to dinner is a thing. It's an ordeal. So that was one thing I always remember. And then the Popeye or the Bojangles biscuits were as big as your fists. They were like just everywhere else the biscuits it looks like a tiny little bottom of a can. This one's like just giant. So even the crack.
Well, and that's why people in the South they go.
Even the crack Donalds are like that. Yeah, even Mickey D's is like that. But.
Right. No, it's The South is an interesting place, and it's awesome. No. It's been home for a long time.
We're gonna go back to talk about North Dakota. So have you been to Fargo before?
Yeah. Long time ago. 20-something years ago when I was coaching down in Florida. But I wasn't really. I don't feel like I went to Fargo because I was, I think, driving the van from Minneapolis to Fargo back and forth for the different waves of kids that were coming through. So
3.5 hours and change depending on construction, not traffic, construction. Because me and Earl are gonna do a podcast on the way out. He doesn't know this yet. We're going to play the I-94 bingo game. I thought about this coming back from my in-laws just outside of St. Cloud a couple weeks ago. I was like, man, how many Chris Lindahl signs are you going to see? We should do a bingo card. So 94 is not about traffic. It's about construction.
Yeah, no. I don't know I don't remember it being that way in like 2000, but
I'd equate it to I-64 going through Hampton, Virginia, growing up. That's I-64 has been under construction. I'm 41. And it's been under construction since before I was born. So
there you go. And then before that, I think the only other time I was at Junior Nationals, I think it was in Iowa, Cedar Falls, maybe.
All on the preview guy, all on the almanac, by the way.
Yeah, I know it was in Iowa, maybe in the mid-'80s.
Because it went to Cedar Falls, then it went to St. Paul for a year, then it went to Fargo. The juniors did, and then they brought them together. I want to say in '95 or '96 in Fargo. So.
95,
something like that. It's in the book.
Oh, okay.
I know because a couple of my teammates were at cadets. They were still in Warrensburg. So there was it's been the junior's been in Fargo for a while.
Yeah.
I think close to 30 years. But
I haven't been back in this capacity, and being able to take pictures and talk to the athletes and do that sort of thing and kind of see the action, on the floor and everything else. So I'm very much looking forward to it. It's gonna be awesome.
And of course, we've got a couple local haunts that I've got here. Let's get on video. We've got the Turf. We got Labby's, which is right next to the Dome, and Herd and Horns, which is co-owned by wrestlers. We'll be out there multiple times. Good burgers, good street tacos. Pretty good draft selection. Again, as we go, the path is B-dubs after the session. Then you go Herd and Horns. Then you end up at the Turf. You never start at the Turf. There's a path here. And sometimes you can interject Labby's. Now there's some breweries like Drecker and Junkyard. Drecker is highly, highly recommended. I know Blue Chip did an event there. No, we can take care of that for you real quick. Yeah. A couple USA Wrestling koozies things. I've actually got some more on the fridge that I've taken. I've actually got more over here. But, so Drecker's got some killer beverages. Blue Chip did a thing out there 2 years ago. So
you're running out of space.
I'm going to run out of space. That's the goal. Abby hates it. It's like she comes in here. She's like, I'm going to have a seizure every time. Just because it's just so much stuff. It's everything going on here. So
It can be a bit of
a bit overwhelming. I've also got a big Gable Stein down here too. Did you go to single speed when you were right by the museum?
So I didn't, and unfortunately, it seems as if everything in the world closes at 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoons in Waterloo. And
Yeah,
yes,
we got the Gable. This is a koozie.
I was planning to go there, but I had to go to the I had to go to the museum first to meet Rebecca, and when we finished, it was closed.
Yep. See, she used to work there, or still does, so she knows. Come on, Becca, you need to do better than that. Where's that Southern hospitality? You feed them beer first, but
I brought her peaches, so
I saw that.
Georgia
Yeah,
peaches.
legit Georgia peaches.
That's right. They were just picked right when I left Georgia.
All right, so we've got that. You haven't been in a while. The turf. I've got that mug. Got that mug 22 years ago. That one's got a clear coat on it. That's the mug. In case anybody, you ever hear people like, Bryant, where's your mug? That's the mug, the one in the middle that I had to clear coat to keep the logo from coming off. They're in order of succession. That's the oldest, then this one's like the next oldest, and then this one. This one, I drink water out of that at the table. Hurtin' Horns is a new addition, and the Labbies I've had for a while. So that's.
So how many times have you been?
This will be my 22nd.
22nd. All right. Any one of the 22 or 21 stand out more than any other?
Well, usually I don't know. Here's the thing: they kind of all run together, and I don't mean it like negatively. It's just I can't being. I mean, I'll always remember Harry Lester just bombing Mark Jane in the Greco finals. Like the first or second year I was there, I'm like, it was like over in like 40 seconds, and that was monstrous. I've had some Virginia kids that made the finals and things like that.
Well, and I was wondering because you have that Virginia tie.
Yeah,
Virginia
kids from my club doing well. Kid from my high school placed out there. I'm trying to think. She was probably 2002 at this point. Kid named Anthony Burke was in the same class as my sister growing up. So to see them come through was cool. Anytime there's kids from my hometown, I kind of geek out a little bit. There's a kid named Riley Howell who was out there a couple years ago. He'd only been wrestling a couple years and goes out and ends up losing this 12-11 match. And he'd only been wrestling like 2 years. I think he wrestled like in 7th grade and then moved back and then wrestled for 2 years and did pretty well. Granted, we have 9,000 classes in Virginia. You guys know about that in Georgia. So, and just seeing those kids go through. And then, I remember Christian Smith was a 83.5-pound cadet, made the finals.
Yeah,
and
right, yeah.
It's like seeing that was like really early. I think that was my first year out there in 99. And the dial-up days. I remember me and Sarah Koenig from North Carolina Matt, the Super 32, were trading the phone line so I could upload stuff on Matt Talk back in the day. Because I was designing at Microsoft Publisher. It was horrible. Then I was using plain code. But those are some of the early memories. But driving out, seeing baseball games, sitting on my Bronco 2, listening to Willie Nelson play at the baseball field right across. And then, in my younger days, it was like, okay, North Dakota bars used to close at 1. And Minnesota bars were, at least on the Moorhead side, were open until 2. So there was always this last call at 12:45. Everybody hopped in with me. And, in several states, coaching staffs were jammed in the back of this truck going to coaches and Chumleys and some of the more sketchier joints over there that were still open. So I think one night we saw coaches, I think, had dwarf wrestling because I don't think you can say the other word anymore. That wasn't what was on the marquee outside, but it was rather interesting. Those places I don't think exist anymore. It was Chumley's was interesting.
Was that quite a show?
That was quite a show. We got there right as it was ending, so it was like, okay, we're here for a wrestling tournament. We're going to see this, and then one year that place was so bad. It was like, I'm just going to go over here and sing karaoke. So I just got up on there and sang like Chocolate Salty Balls and the late Brian Keck. I come off the stage, and Keck he's my roommate that week in Fargo, too. And he's just doubled over laughing, like, ah! Yeah, it was, those are some of the, it's not necessarily the year.
Is there video of that?
No, this is pre, like, this is pre-smartphone.
Okay.
Like, I didn't even have a flip phone with a camera on it. So, this was like 02-ish, 03-ish.
Got it.
I might have been, I don't know, because I typically stayed in the dorms. So that's how I do it versus a hotel room. But, so you're coming back.
Yep. Been a long time, but and the thing that struck me was one of the things from your almanac. I was looking at this increase in the number of entries over the years, and as I've been writing my blog posts, every single one of of our groups from the Southeast have more entries this year than they've ever had. Well, than they had in 2019. And I'm wondering if that's a trend. And I saw maybe Texas has like over 100 kids coming.
I haven't looked at the individual rosters to look at the total numbers. I just know that Illinois always brings a bunch because they got their state and then they qualify through all the regionals, which doesn't count against your state total.
Right.
So looking at the numbers, that's one of those things where I just, as soon as we get there, what are the entries? How many states? Because I've been tracking that since '97. I've got some, like the first year I think there were 198 entries. In 1971, it was only junior freestyle.
And freestyle,
because it was only junior freestyle in Iowa City in 1971. Sandy Stevens was on the mic for that, by the way.
Is that right?
Yep.
Is that right? Holy.
Yep, she's announced every single one except one.
And trivia, what's the
Would have
year?
been 99, my first year, because she wasn't there because I believe her late husband had a stroke that year and she didn't go. And then I think it was right around the same time. But Sandy had said, when I talked to her at the Hall of Fame, she's announced in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and now the 2020s.
Wow.
She'll say she started when she was 4.
I understand that. Wow, that's
yeah, and I'm at the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. This will be my 4th decade. That's scary.
And in 2050, when we're having this conversation again,
What?
we'll have to count off 7.
What?
Right.
2050. That's 30 years. I'll be 71. Well, hopefully the Speakeasy will still exist.
No doubt.
So we've had our local beers. He's also stopped in because of the brewery situation. He's a beer snob like I am. I'm Inbounds, Laser Loons. The Kolsch is pretty good. He's got a prize brewing. That's a pineapple sour. That wasn't his choice. That was just what I had left because I'm cleaning out the fridge because I won't be here for 3.5 weeks because there's Fargo and then that thing called Tokyo. Yeah, it's not like that. You get some of those sours that are just like, it tastes like every other sour. This is real crisp and refreshing. So
I'm hoping Tony brings a Russian River sour with him.
Yeah, he's
that would be the sour.
Yeah, because one of our patrons, Guru Rishow, he sent me some Pliny. I'm not gonna say how he did it. Statute of limitations may have run out or not, but and then the International Podcast Day, Tony was there. Rotundo, we're talking crack. I had my Pliny the Elder here on Podcast Day here, so that was what we got. Ted Carreras in the chat saying shout out to the Dirty South represent. So he's
absolutely
checked out a lot of footage here today. So as we go forward, one of the things you've been wanting to talk about is wrestling in the Southeast and wrestling in the South at the college level. Is we've got programs, the 6 programs in Arkansas. We've got Alabama's got a Division III program with Huntington. Matt Oliver, the coach there. The word about Mississippi has been interesting because that news hit a couple weeks ago, and then Earl, being Johnny on the spot, actually did some research. Apparently Mississippi's always sanctioned high school wrestling, but they've never had a state series, so there's been never any reason for high schools to have wrestling in Mississippi because, well, we don't have a state tournament. We don't have wrestling. I know that Sam Harnsengram, the old coach at Jesuit back in New Orleans back in the day when he retired from Jesuit, went over to, I think, Jackson and started a program. And then there's I believe it's the deaf and blind school, or Mississippi School for the Blind, I believe, or the deaf. One of those schools has had it for a long time. Of course, we know Ocean Springs has made.
Ocean Springs,
and then there's a couple other coaches out there that have reached out. We're going to have them on the show here eventually. But talking about the high school, there's kind of always been wrestling, but it's always been like here and there. It's never been organized. And I understand that Mississippi's getting their state chapter organized. They're getting things rolling. So that's one. We've got all these programs in Georgia that have popped up. Life has really done really well at the NAIA level for both men's and women's wrestling. North Carolina's got a ton of D1 schools. We've seen Presbyterian added, Division I men's and women's team. Florida's adding NAIA programs. So, I mean, we got a lot of college stuff, but still, what are we missing? What are we missing? We're missing the Power 5. We're missing the SEC because Missouri, I don't care. They're not in the Southeast.
No.
They're in the SEC, but they're not. Gone are the days of SEC wrestling, but here's the thing. It didn't really live that long anyway.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was that, So Sweet on Bach comes in from Oklahoma and really was part of the SIWA, Southern
SEIWA.
SEIWA, and was pretty much ran the game in the Southeast for a long time, and then out of nowhere, the SEC starts having a championship in 1970.
Thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah, and we ran for about a decade. until 1980, 1979, I think it was.
I believe Georgia and Alabama
dropped.
were. I think Georgia might have been 78, 79. Alabama was right around the time. Auburn, I think, was 81.
Yeah, Auburn was 81. I think Florida was 79. Might have been 79, 80. Anyway, so we ran it for that decade. What's always really interesting is that I want to know kind of what the impetus for it started, like in 1970, and all these. And Georgia had a program, and Auburn had a program, and
Auburn was pretty
Georgia
good.
Tech, and
Again, talking about Sweet Umbach, like he was the tournament director for the high school state tournament in Alabama forever. Back even before it was Auburn, it was what Alabama Poly, I think, was the name of the school.
Right. So. And then I think it was because of him that it started. But then we always I talked to Fletcher Carr when I was doing an interview with him, and I was talking to him, and he was a coach at Kentucky, and I talked to several other individuals, coaches and things like that. We always focus on Title IX being the issue of why the programs were dropped, and certainly it played a role. There's no doubt about it. Do you know like what other issues or what are some of the other things that kind of caused these programs to go away
Here's the thing: none of those ADs are alive anymore. Like, because
and you
Pat Dye's, I guess I don't want to say agent, but his representative said, it was right before Fargo, I think 3 years ago, said yes, Pat would love to talk to you about it. Because he retired a farmer, and he was just tending to his farm and rode his tractor every day. He was in his 70s and said, yeah. I says, well, I've got this coming up, and I got the World, so I'll come back, circle back. And then by the time I circle back, he got sick, and then he never really got better. And then COVID, I think, was the last blow for him. But he was the only one left because he was the AD at Auburn when they dropped. Bear Bryant was the AD at Alabama. Galen Hall, all these football coaches were the ADs. And while a lot of us are from the old times are quick to blame Title IX, well, you look at the amount. Like, I think Minnesota had a women's volleyball team in 1972. How many women's college sports were there? And then you got to start adding them. Well, one, you don't have to subtract from the men's side, but that was the easy way out. So some of that is how they looked at it. And of course, we know that Title IX and its interpretation is what it is, and gives it doesn't say don't do it. But that type of thinking was easier.
Not the
Well, and also we also got to look at football money wasn't what it is now. If that situation happened with today's money, there's no reason they need to drop sports because they can afford it. But I mean, we've heard stories about training tables, and they want it for a training room. We've heard all these horror stories about college football coaches and what they did for wrestling. And I really wanted to know who it was. And Bear Bryant's been dead for decades at this point. I actually always envisioned a cover of amateur wrestling news when I ran it for 18 months. I always pictured that iconic picture of Bear Bryant with the plaid hat, and I wanted the headline to say the man who killed SEC wrestling. I wanted to see how that would have resonated with the sports world, and I never quite got to it. We're still researching it, but Vanderbilt had a team in the 50s, and at some point we're looking at schools that had wrestling prior to 1972. When Title IX was introduced, and prior to 79 when it really started being enforced. I think 79 is kind of, there's three dates I look at, 72, 79, and 92, which is when Norma Cantu and the president, I don't want to blame the Clinton administration, but she was the Office of Civil Rights individual who came up with the term safe harbor. So prong one, safe harbor, proportionality, quota system, all those kind of tying together. So those are where I'm starting to look at where are the drops happening. So I'm going through all these amateur wrestling newses that I've got here, the preview guides, the old NCAA guides, which I think I've got through 82, and then the Hall of Fame has them digitized, and trying to find out why they dropped. Well, prior to like the 90s, there was really no organizational flow. Like you could be D3 in football and D1 in basketball. Dayton and Wagner met in the Division III football championships. They were non-scholarship football, but they were D3 in football, but they were D1 in basketball. It's like, and then they finally uniformed everybody. Like Georgetown, D1 basketball, D3 football before the changeover. So you'd have teams starting up a team here and there, and just like, does that count? I mean, if like Birmingham Southern had a team for 3 years, is that a dropped pro? Is that really? I mean, it's an experiment. It's like, okay, and in that area you had a lot of that. Okay, we got Harold Nichols went to Arkansas State and coached there for 3 or 4 years. That was it.
Right.
Usually you'd have a coach, oh yeah, you can do it, and it was varsity. Now you've got to go through a hoop. You got to have facilities. You got to have payment structure. Basically HR. You got to have benefits, full time, part time, what all that. So I'm still looking to figure out what were the causes to that. So I want to know who the first real domino was. did they work together? And that's where Pat Dye passing away really, because he was the only one who really could have probably shed some light on what happened.
Right.
But back to what I was saying is the money wasn't there like it was today. So if you apply SEC football logic to today, like you can't. It's like you can't apply 1990. You can't apply logic from 2021 to 1979. Money wasn't there. The NCAA, I believe, they controlled the number of college football games. There was no cable contracts. There was no Big Ten network. There was no Longhorn network. So, back in the day, I believe some of those schools didn't have the money to run 15 men's sports and 1 women's sport. So when they was like, all right, well, we got to start doing some things. And well, this sport we've been here 10 years. We don't have any real good. We have no connection to the community. Some of it, the curmudgeon old coach doesn't help matters. I don't think we were our own best friend in some of those eras. And this is all before I was around, so it's just a guess.
So a couple of things that really stood out to me when I was looking at it was one during that decade between say the mid 1970s and the early 1980s, 76 to say 85 or so, that decade, there were like 54 D1 programs that were dropped, and they were either in the SEC or in the Southeast, or they were out west with Cal and Washington. Gonzaga had a program. UCLA, all of them, and I'm just wondering what was it about those two places that it dominated the reason for them choosing to drop the programs in those two places?
Yeah, it's a good question because, we look at the Pacific Northwest where Gonzaga is. I mean, Spokane's got great wrestling tradition. I mean, it's not just Vision Quest. I mean, it's got Washington has the Matt Classic has got great wrestling tradition. Oregon, I mean, just the Pacific Northwest has great wrestling, and you see their performances in Fargo every year, and you see the towns that come out for it and stuff, and it's like, that's a good question. So what happened? What were these? How much should we blame our own coaches in that era for not fostering an environment of community? Like somebody looks at like Tennessee. Gray Simons was the coach there when they dropped. He was the coach at Old Dominion when I was there. Some of the questions were is it because Gray had so many guys from New York that the local community didn't reach out to? Or like Oklahoma State, when did they draw huge? When they had 8 Oklahomans in the lineup. Something to consider.
Well, I mean, I think that actually what you bring up there is actually really important because I think it was Dale Kettleson was the head coach at LSU. And LSU was not a great program. It was an okay program, but it was whatever. And he decided to step down, and he had reached out and really fostered the build of high school programs within Louisiana. But when he stepped down, and I'm a butcher Larry
Chickatano.
Chickatano's
Another
name.
guy was on my list that I didn't get to, and he passed away on us.
And Chickatano comes in and raises that program. I mean, what pulls in Kevin Jackson. I mean, we're talking raises that program to a top 10 program. But none of those 10 kids that were starting for him, as far as I know, were from Louisiana. So did that have an impact where they didn't feel like it was as much of a connection, like you were saying, as maybe it was when Kettleson was there? I don't know. I mean, we can just kind of.
I mean, what's the wrestling culture like in Tuscaloosa in 1979? When Alabama never had an All-American.
Right.
And Jimmy Carr ended his career at Alabama. A lot of people don't know that either.
He did.
And what's funny, I think they had 1 or 2 blood round guys, and then we look at Georgia. I don't think Georgia ever had an All-American. And then Georgia State didn't, and they came and went in the 90s. I mean, they were only a team like 8 years. And then to your 10-year point, how much time can you look at it and be like, well, I mean, how much can we really be mad on one side going, well, they were only, oh yeah, we're mad. They had a team 10 years. It's like, we've had wrestling since 1928. Are we really worried about a 10-year gap where this school that clearly doesn't want wrestling doesn't have it? Or do most of us sit like we feel wrestling should be at every school because it's that great of a sport? I mean, Power Fives move the needle, but Power Fives don't need the money anymore. Your group of 5, your pretenders like UConn that want to be Power 5 and they're good at basketball and they're dropping sports and they're funneling money into their football team, which sucks in eternity. That's the losing effort. Old Dominion's going to lose their ass on football because they have poor administration who doesn't see the value in other sports. That's why they're going to lose money. That's why they had to cut wrestling, because of bad leadership. Sometimes it's not the coach. Sometimes it's not Title IX. Sometimes it's just poor administration.
Right.
You know, when you got an AD allowed to run wild and do whatever he wants, bad things are going to happen.
So the question to you is, will we ever see? And I'm more concerned about the SEC schools or the ACC schools. Will we see those? Will we see college wrestling back?
I think the ACC has the better shot than the SEC, because there's no infrastructure right now to create SEC wrestling. ACC has a conference. They've been wrestling since the 40s. So
They've been wrestling.
Yeah, I'm saying conference championships, I believe, started in the 40s,
yeah.
because I think they started as dual meet championships. But I mean, the teams have been around forever. I mean,
Forever.
Wake Forest even had a team, not very long, but they had a team. Georgia Tech had a team, not for very long, but they had a team.
Well, Georgia Tech had a team for quite a while, didn't
They were. I mean, it was one of those things. They pop up, they pop off, they pop up, pop off. So
Clemson had
the Clemson really was. I mean,
Sammy Henson.
you know, I mean, Chalice was there, Noel Loban. I mean, he was an Olympic medalist for Great Britain, Long Island guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was a junior college guy. Farmingdale State, I believe, is the name of the school. It was a junior college guy that went to Clemson and represented.
Okay.
Born in England, was 84 bronze medalist at the Olympics.
There
So,
you go.
and then, well, because the SEC has no infrastructure, and
They don't.
you'd have to have 6 teams start a conference.
Right.
Right now, I think Kentucky's men's soccer team is in Conference USA. Kentucky and South
Yes.
Carolina, and it's like those are Power 5 teams that should not be playing against against the ODUs of the world. They're not like-minded schools. They should not be. That's So again, but like the women's wrestling discussion, like Sacred Heart, great. Presbyterian, great. They're not moving the needle. Arizona State and Iowa on the women's side, that's going to move the needle because there's a large contingent of alumni base. If you could get somebody to take a chance, what it's going to take is how many schools get in the SEC? 13? 13 or 14?
14. I think
We have an even
I think
number?
We have an
Okay,
even
we do.
number on
So
East and
I
West.
thought we had an uneven number for a while.
We did.
Is that when Mizzou came in?
I think so.
So
Yeah.
we're going to look at, you're going to need 14 people with $25 million each to all drop down and say, all right, we're doing it. And then you got to bring women's wrestling with it, and which would be great. But you're going to look at these schools don't want to pay for it. Okay, we'll have it if you do this, 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 and this.
So the answer is no. You don't think the SEC will have wrestling?
As a conference, no. I think the opportunity for a single school to start doing it might be a possibility.
Okay.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know how much Arkansas is. I mean, right now they can get behind. They probably need to get behind Little Rock before they try to go for Fayetteville. So that's one of those things I'd love to see. I mean, I think LSU could be a draw. I mean, from an SEC perspective, I don't know how great Gainesville is, but looks like a fun time.
Yeah. No. Gainesville's,
I mean, I think Athens and some of the college towns that they were huge draws. Like Tony Ramos, Willie talked about this on his show yesterday about the ACC schools being able to draw. Like Miami would draw. I don't necessarily know if Tallahassee, Florida State would draw as well, but Georgia Tech could draw.
Georgia Tech would be a huge
Clemson.
draw.
But again, these schools have already cut. A lot of them cut sports. And then Clemson cut and reinstated track and field and cross country. It's like we're trying to shoehorn wrestling back in places that don't want it.
Right.
So as much as it would be for the SEC, I say we kind of maybe change the mindset of it, like, okay, you know what? These schools can make an impact. Granted, they don't move the needle. This kind of contradicts what I was saying. But, a Gonzaga would be great because there's a school that could conceivably be successful in yet another sport. Their men's basketball team has done it the little engine that could.
Mm-hmm.
Campbell Wrestling, okay, here's another example of people, everybody get behind Campbell. Well, Campbell has no national alumni brand. Like Texas A&M, everywhere. Texas, everywhere. Florida, everywhere. Campbell, you know them when they make the tournament once every 15 years.
Right, and they upset Virginia in the or something along those lines.
Yeah, like UMBC,
like
I mean, okay, what's a retriever? It's a dog, yeah. So there's so many different ways to go with this. I hope we have SEC wrestling, but it's going to take men's and women's wrestling being added simultaneously with a donation to an academic department to make it happen. And we've got money as a sport, but we don't have money. I look at it as like Stanford's got Fortune 20 CEOs. People that graduate from alma mater don't. They're not. No, they might own. Buddies own tire businesses, and and pest control companies. They're not
Right.
they're not
They're not
venture
Silicon Valley.
capitalists.
Right.
Okay, we got to look at where the money is, and then a part of that is I think Wrestlers and Business Network has done a great job at tapping into those people and getting them back involved, because there are a lot of people with some disposable income be like, all right, I'm going to drop my estate on my alma mater, and here's the boxes to check. We need to find those people, but we also have such a small window of people that ever wrestled at Alabama. The alumni base is so small for wrestling, and I mean at this point, that was if you're in college in 1980. Let's just put 40 more years on it. You're getting into your golden years here. So, what do you got for money? What do you got for business? I mean, we got to find those people.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Well, I was just at Woodward Academy.
Jeff Reagan,
right? I don't know, maybe about 3-4 weeks ago or so. Saw their wall of champions, and it popped out to me that Dan and I don't remember his brother's name, Kathy, who owned
Chick-fil-A,
right? We're state champions at Woodward Academy. So those are the kind of individuals that if you were going to try to make some type of movement towards, getting.
Well, you also have to rope them in, but not just say, hey, I need your money. Like Dan Cathy has an honorary degree from Anderson University, which they dropped. They dropped it. Well, I don't think he actually went there. I think he's got an honorary degree from there. It's one of those things. Well, when I had their AD on when they dropped wrestling, he goes, yeah, it's not like I can go ask Dan Cathy for $2,000 or $5,000 because we gave him a degree once. You got to have them involved. That's the thing, is fostering those alumni relations. And again, back to the coaches back in the 70s and 80s when all these programs. What were you engaging your alumni then? Like we have these CEO leadership courses now, like for the NWCA, and there's now social media training. Granted, there was no social media then, but what were we doing then to foster that community and those relationships to make your team? I mean, how many guys were failing out? How many guys were getting in fight? I mean, those optics back then, you could drop a team for things like that because it's not going to make headlines. These 4 guys were popped cheating on a test. Well, let's get rid of wrestling. We don't have that problem anymore. That type of thing happened.
So athletic departments have gotten much better at doing that. I think coaches have gotten much better at kind of how to market those things, how to do those things, and everything else. Unfortunately, we're sitting way back and don't have those opportunities because we don't have those programs in the SEC or anything like that.
I still think women's wrestling is the key to putting wrestling back places it hasn't been for a long time. I think you can get your one AAA schools, for example, your D1 schools that don't have football, that need male enrollment. Those are, I don't want to say low-hanging fruit because you still got to add them, but those are the places that are prime for a men's program. Right now we got to contend with lacrosse, which is a hugely successful and one of the fastest growing sports on the men's side. So, back when we had 300,000 people competing in high school level, we had fewer choices. There wasn't lacrosse. There wasn't as many soccer teams. So we've got to contend with retention of the kids to even have those opportunities. Are we at the right number of schools? I don't know. We're adding 20, 30 teams a year. We're still seeing forfeits on those teams. So until we've got no forfeits and we've got an overabundance of people, I think we still need to make sure growing wrestling and making it look like a sport that can be beneficial for schools, not just like we need a team in the SEC because the Power 5 needs wrestling. That's a great mantra, but is it? It's got to be a business decision.
Right. So it's nice to see Life have the success that they've had. It's nice to see Reinhardt and the Florida schools that are the NAIA programs and so on and so forth. I don't know that it has an impact on any of those SEC.
No, because they're not looking at the NAIA. Like, who cares? Like,
But it's great to have that back.
I think the only NAIA that's drawing probably any eyeballs from a big program is probably Grandview, because they're in the state of Iowa and they almost beat Iowa State back in like 2013 or something like that. So there's they're not looking at the success of that school and be like, oh well, we should do this, because that's not how college athletics works. No D1 school is going to look at an NAIA school as a peer institution. They're always going to overshoot their, our peer institutions are Gonzaga and Wichita State and all that. No, you're not. Your peer institution is Longwood, for example. That's what you need to compare yourself to. And Longwood, for example, is a school that should bring back wrestling. They were Division II, put a lot of coaches in the Virginia high school ranks because it had the teaching programs, and they were tons of teachers were coming from Longwood. I think that's been a big reason Virginia wrestling has kind of taken a dive in the last 20 years, is once they cut Longwood, there's the pipeline of high school coaches that came from Longwood, that wrestled at Longwood, that coached. I think at one time, in 1999 or 2000, the year they announced they were cutting it, We counted at a high school tournament 22 different coaches that wrestled at Longwood at one tournament.
Wow.
At one tournament. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it has a
They
huge
weren't head
impact.
coaches, but they were all. I mean, and they were all in a span from like 89 to 97. So the impact of those schools, that can be where the little school, all those life kids are going to go fan out in Georgia,
Right.
and then they're going to
help.
put more kids out, and they're going to coach their kids up, and then all of a sudden we're going to have twice as many, 3 times as many kids in Georgia that are super good. That all of a sudden now Georgia Tech's going, wait a minute. They get one administrator that actually is paying attention to wrestling and be like, wait a minute. We've got all these great kids that could be bringing in people to come here. Because when people stop going to college on campus and they do this, they're going to be looking for enrollment. I mean, yeah, because that sticker price is hurting things now.
One of the other things that's also popped up was HBCUs,
Mhm.
and we have a lot of HBCUs across the Southeast, and I think there's only one current program that is D2 in South
Yeah,
Carolina.
Allen just reclassified from NAI to D2. And just had a coaching change as well.
Right, Coach Pack is now the head coach there, I believe.
Sounds about right.
But I remember back when Howard had a
Mhm.
program, and I remember back when lots of them had a program, and we've also seen that kind of decrease. We're talking about the SEC, but that's also
Well, like
happening
the
as far as
SIAC. Now, I'm a. Some people know this by now, but I'm a huge black college football fan. So, like the Bayou Classic and all these the class Turkey Day Classic, Tuskegee and Alabama A&M and all those games that you now you can see on like ESPNU and ESPN Plus. I grew up Hampton in the shadows of Hampton University, Hampton and Norfolk State, the Battle of the Bay, Hampton versus Howard. Who's the real HU? Grambling and Southern, of course, the Bayou Classic, and then it's the SIAC. That entire path of Division II schools they're prime for wrestling. They need male enrollment. They need male enrollment, but they're also putting so much into. They make so much on these 35,000. They get big stadiums. They draw big. I mean, they sell out Legion Field for 2 really bad D2 football teams because it's an event. Imagine making an event. Put it in an event. Put a step show around a wrestling event. Good Lord, the potential especially the Division II HBCUs in the SIAC is dramatic. And the SWACs never had wrestling. I don't think any SWAC schools ever had wrestling. I know the club coach at Florida A&M is probably going to take exception to that because they're now in the SWAC from the MEAC. But
and he does.
yeah, he does. I mean,
online.
we see a lot.
He's
I
all
mean,
over it.
newspapers are covering them too. I'm seeing a lot of these FAMU wrestling. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. The clubs are getting some plug. So, but yeah, that HBCU corridor down there. I mean, the last one that was D1 was Dell State. It was Howard, Dell State, Norfolk State were the last 3. Coppin State and Morgan State were also pretty close. I think my roommate still went to the Coppin State Open in college, so there were still, weren't that many left. The MEAC was left hanging. I think when South Carolina State dropped, that was pretty much the end of their conference, and then they kind of got dispersed. And Howard, I mean, they came down to our tournament all the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just another area that I think that we could put some focus on, and
we got to educate those schools, though. That's the thing. Like, Old Dominion, let's use them as an example. It's not an HBCU, but 8 of its 10 starters were black. I mean, and then the schools like celebrating diversity, and you cut the most African American team in the country in any division. So, and thing is, the administration just dense to that fact. So, I'd love to put a team in Hampton. I'd love to put a team back at Norfolk State. I'd love to put a team at Howard. Howard of any school, and then I think Howard. Morehouse would be a great one in Division II because it's much like Wabash. It's a liberal arts college. It's men only, so it's a men's only college. You could draw in there, and then I think the historical institute. Give me Tuskegee. That would be just to represent Tuskegee in a wrestling program would be like. I'm not African American, but I growing up with a lot of kids in Newport News that went HBCU, and knowing the what the sports are like and these events are like, the classics and such. It's such a unique untapped thing. We're talking about the SEC so much, but the HBCUs are really where we can grow the sport.
Right. Well, and you brought up
Again,
Florida
men
A&M,
and women.
For me, yes, but Florida A&M. I mean, you've got a coach who's doing a ton and working really hard. And I'm thinking to myself, if they're not recognizing what they have at Florida A&M with how much coach is doing down there and everything else, man, I'm just wondering how much we really have to do to get on the radar of the administration to actually make these
It's going to take money. Somebody's going to show up. That's not just I have money. We don't want a DuPont thing where he shows up at Villanova, throws them some money, and now he's the coach, and then 2 years later they're gone. Nobody wants that. And I'm not talking about with what happened later on with the maniac, but that type of situation doesn't happen in college sports. I mean, you've got to, Greg Hatcher brings this up when we talked to him about what happened at Little Rock, and it wasn't just Little Rock in Ouachita and all the 6 Arkansas schools. I think that might be 8 now. Counting the women's programs, like you show up and it's not like, hey, I want wrestling. No, it's like, what does your math department need? What does your, where's the $1 billion mathematician? Well, I don't know if mathematicians make $1 billion, but give me a good well-off mathematician who has a wrestling background who wants to, look like, okay, because I always thought if I win the Powerball, I will bring back wrestling at my school, but I will also contribute to the communications and English departments that help me. Let's amp those up. That's my plan. Whether it be, and maybe that school's not where it is. Maybe it's going to be across the river at CNU, a Division III school. Maybe it's at Virginia Wesleyan down the block. Maybe it's at that awful place in Richmond, Violent Crime University. Excuse me, VCU. I'm kidding. They're rivals. I can say that. Virginia Convict. But maybe it's that school, for example, as we take a joking turn in a serious discussion, that, you've got to, it's not just, hey, I'm a money guy, make me a booster, give me money. It's not like, not everything's Phil Knight at Oregon. Not everything's Pat Kilkenny. And like I said, we can't shoehorn wrestling into Oregon because they don't want it. So we got to have something to bring to the table. Academics, that's one thing presidents are going to look at. Okay, what are you going to do? Well, our science building needs an upgrade. Done. Tie all those things in. It's not just because academics don't like athletic only gifts. They're like, well, we need more things here for our science department, our meteorology, or ODU is really good at oceanography. Like, what are we going to do with those departments? So that's where we need to get it in. It's not just somebody shows up and says they want men's and women's wrestling. Got to do it with the academic side too.
Yeah. Well, and Little Rock was prime because they don't have football, right? So, there's not really as much of a Title IX quote-unquote issue at Little Rock and starting a program there as it might be at Fayetteville or some of the other places. So I don't know if there are other programs that are similar to Little Rock that could start something like that and go down that.
Well, like let's look at Utah Valley. That's that one AAA, the Division I school without football. So that's where we're looking. And then problem is some of those schools have already had it, like Chicago State. You don't want to put anything there. They're looking for a conference right now. So you've only got about 20 of those you can look at.
Yeah, you don't have many.
And you got to make sure that they're geographically like the AD at Little Rock now is at University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, and they're doing a football feasibility study. They just joined the WAC, and it would be like, well, it'd be great there, but they're also hours away from the nearest competition. Right. So you also got to look at it realistically. Who are you going to compete against? The D2s don't have as much of an issue competing against the NAIA. The D1s, you got to have some D1s close. You can't. You got to have. You can't be wrestling a D2 and NAIA schedule. It's not going to work. You're not. That's where I think the Southeast is also tough because the next closest D1's the Citadel, and Presbyterian Citadel. Okay, you got 2, but Florida, you're still going to have to go through 2 states to get there. So
no, you have a long way to go, especially.
And you're going to be a bus league. That's just what it is, because we saw, again, let's use my alma mater. They're in the MAC. They're flying to half of their matches before they combine with EWL. So
and that's one of your challenges with LSU.
Well, anything with the SEC. I mean, like I think.
Well, you could be up in Kentucky. You could be in Tennessee.
Right. Well, look at the map. So I was looking at like Bellarmine. So let's look at them in Louisville. And I was like, well, how far is that from? I was thinking, could I ever announce one of their matches? Because if I go down to Little Rock, I announce Little Rock's home matches. Yes, I live in Minnesota, and I announce Little Rock's home matches.
Yes.
Thank you. It's 8 hours to Louisville, and people look at me. Oh, Kentucky to Arkansas is not that far. Well, edges the border, yeah, but I mean, it's not necessarily close. Like App State and Little Rock are both in the Sun Belt for their all sports. They're not close, so it's like when Shorter dropped wrestling. They were pretty far away from the next D2 team. I think Ouachita was about 9 hours away, and then you'd have to. Pembroke wasn't super far, but I mean, like, you're really struggling. This is before I think King had moved to the Division II. But I'm saying travel is a legit concern. So if you can, I'd love to see a pod of schools start it. And all right, like it would be cool to see the SWAC. Okay, 6U schools, let's start wrestling. You're going to be bad your first year. You're going to be bad your second year. But hey, if all schools start a conference tournament right away, then you get the trickle down effect. I mean, or even schools that can create affiliates. Like, okay, say there's a couple SWAC schools and a couple Southland schools that start wrestling. Well, you've got a southeast, southwest kind of, get somebody to get the MAC to pick them up, or who can be an affiliate. You can't create wrestling only conferences right now. I think there's a moratorium on that, but you put the options on there. I think single sport conferences are not a thing right now. They can be, but I think they put a moratorium on it. So, but again, that's so many different directions we can go with this.
Yeah, no, I know, and I think actually one of the things that you just brought up was really important, and then we can kind of move on to something different, and that is that it took 10 years for the SEC programs to really be competitive and to have a top 10 team and those sorts of things. It's even in today's.
There's also rules now.
It's going to take a period. Right.
Some of those teams weren't exactly on the level with NCAA rules either.
It's gonna take a period of time for programs to ramp up to be competitive. And be able to compete against some of the top programs. So. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about that, and going back to Fargo, it's a fun time.
Yeah. One thing is, I realized I need to get some air in here. I'm starting to sweat a little bit, but I think once we figure out what I'm doing with the video, I'm glad you stopped on in and drive safe. So tell people where they can check out what you're doing on the web, how they can contribute, and things of that nature.
So SEWrestle is on Twitter, Instagram. There's a Patreon that I have. Pretty much, I pretty much fund the entire thing. I work on it for free. I do all of it, everything else. But I have a few contributors. I think 25 or so on Patreon. It helps offset the cost. I drive up from Macon all the way up to here. It's not inexpensive. Every single weekend, trying to hit a different tournament across the Southeast. Pays for gas, that sort of thing, which is really great. So people can support through Patreon. That's great. And then SEWrestle.com, SoutheastWrestling.com. Both of them will go to the same place. Really focuses on primarily the promotion of the sport at the high school level. When I was a coach, I was so frustrated that we didn't get very much promotion whatsoever. We just didn't get any love from very many people at all. And you know what? That shouldn't happen. We have the ability, especially now with the internet and web pages and everything else. It's not like back in 1994 when you have to actually get a paper copy of the guillotine or the predicament or whatever.
Still get the paper copy. It's right.
But you don't have.
No, you
to.
don't. But.
And nowadays we can promote. We can help highlight the sport in a different way, and that's kind of the whole point of the entire website and Twitter and Instagram.
Jason Fulmore, thanks for coming to the Speakeasy and talking wrestling. We could have done this for several more hours, and I got a feeling we're not done yet with Fargo coming up.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to being up there. We're going to talk to a bunch of kids. I'm sure we're going to spend some time having some conversations about this one kid who broke out and from some state, and it's always fun to talk about those kids who may not be on the radar, and then they pop off and have a great tournament. So I think we'll have those conversations.
Sounds great.
All right, man.